The moment he said it, the room seemed to tilt, as if gravity itself had decided I no longer belonged there. "You weren't invited," my son said, his voice flat, rehearsed, almost polite. I remember blinking, certain I'd misheard him, certain there had to be another sentence coming, an explanation, a joke, an apology. But nothing followed. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, and in that silence I felt something inside me crack, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the quiet way old bones break. I had called him because I'd seen the photos online. White flowers, warm lights, smiling faces I recognized and others I didn't. My son in a tailored suit, his arm around a woman I barely knew but had tried so hard to welcome. I had smiled at the screen at first, confused but hopeful, thinking maybe the invitation had been lost, maybe there was a simple mistake. Mothers are experts at excusing the people they love. So I called him, my voice already trembling before he answered, and asked the question that had been burning in my chest. "Why didn't you invite me?" That was when he said it. "You weren't family anymore." The words landed like a verdict. In that single moment, decades of bedtime stories, scraped knees, shared laughter, and whispered promises were reduced to nothing more than an inconvenience. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it, wondering how love could evaporate so completely without leaving even a trace behind. I raised him alone for most of his childhood, a fact I never wore like a badge but carried quietly, the way you carry something heavy because you must. His father left when he was 5, walked out one rainy evening with a suitcase and a list of excuses that never quite added up. From that day on, it was just the two of us against the world. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, and learned how to stretch meals, patience, and hope further than they were ever meant to go. I learned the sound of his breathing at night, so I could tell if he was dreaming or crying. I learned which stories calmed him, and which questions scared him. When he said he wanted to be an engineer, I nodded with pride even though I had no idea how I would afford it. When he brought home his first report card with straight A's, I taped it to the fridge like it was a trophy. I never missed a school play, even when I had to stand at the back in my work uniform, smelling faintly of detergent and exhaustion. I thought that was what family meant, showing up over and over, even when it hurt. So when he grew older and more distant, I told myself it was natural. Children grow, lives expand, priorities shift. I never imagined that one day, my presence would not just be optional, but unwelcome. When he introduced me to her, I tried to be everything I thought a good mother should be. I smiled too much, listened too carefully, and swallowed my doubts. She was polite, reserved, and efficient in a way that made me feel clumsy by comparison. I brought gifts when I visited, asked about her work, complimented her cooking. I told myself that love sometimes looks like effort, that relationships take time. But there were small moments that unsettled me. Glances exchanged when I spoke, conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. Decisions made without consulting me even when they affected us all. Once, I overheard her say, "We need boundaries," and though she didn't mention my name, I felt it settle on my shoulders like an accusation. My son assured me everything was fine, that I was overthinking, that she just needed space. Space. It became the word he used whenever I asked why I wasn't invited to dinner, why holidays were suddenly complicated, why phone calls felt rushed. I gave them space until my world felt hollowed out, until the silence between us grew louder than any argument ever had been. The wedding was the final confirmation of what I had been trying not to see. They planned it quietly, efficiently, and without me. Friends, co-workers, distant relatives, all were deemed worthy of witnessing the moment my son promised his life to someone else. I was not. When I asked him how he could do this, how he could look at a guest list and not notice my absence, he sighed like a tired manager dealing with a difficult employee. "You always make things emotional," he said. We wanted something peaceful. Peaceful. As if my love were a disruption. As if my presence carried chaos instead of care. I wanted to scream that I had earned the right to be there. That no one in that room knew him the way I did. But I didn't. I listened as he explained how his wife felt uncomfortable. How their future required clear lines. How I needed to accept reality. The reality, apparently, was that I had been reclassified, from mother to problem, from family to outsider. After the call ended, I sat alone at my kitchen table for hours, replaying every moment of his childhood, searching for the mistake that must have led here. Mothers are taught to take responsibility for everything. Our children's successes, our children's failures, even their cruelty. I wondered if I had loved him too tightly, or not enough. If I had been too present or too tired. The house felt unbearably quiet, every corner echoing with memories that now felt like they belonged to someone else. His old room was still there, preserved like a shrine to a life that had moved on without me. I walked in, touched the edge of his desk, and felt grief rise up so suddenly it stole my breath. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about erasure. About being written out of the story I had helped create. Weeks passed, and with them came a strange clarity. Without the constant effort of trying to stay included, I noticed how much energy I had been spending on someone who no longer reached back. I stopped calling. I stopped checking social media. The silence was painful, but it was also honest. Friends began to notice the change in me. The way I spoke more carefully, the way my laughter sounded tentative, like it was testing whether it was still allowed to exist. One evening, a close friend asked me a question that shifted something deep inside my chest. If a stranger treated you the way your son does, would you accept it? I didn't answer right away, because the truth frightened me. No, I wouldn't. The realization felt like betrayal and relief all at once. I began rebuilding my life in small, deliberate ways. I enrolled in a class I had always wanted to take, but never had time for. I redecorated the living room, moving furniture that had been arranged around a family that no longer gathered there. I learned how to sit with the pain instead of running from it, how to acknowledge my grief without letting it define me. Some days were harder than others. Some days, I woke up reaching for my phone, forgetting for a moment that there was no message waiting. But slowly, the ache dulled. In its place grew a quiet strength, the kind that comes from choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else. Months later, he called. His voice was hesitant, uncertain. He spoke about stress, misunderstandings, how things had gotten out of hand. He didn't apologize, not really. He didn't say the words I had needed to hear. He asked if we could move forward. I listened calmly, surprised by my own composure. When he finished, I told him I loved him because that was still true. But I also told him that love did not mean accepting exclusion or disrespect. I told him family is not something you revoke when it becomes inconvenient. There was a long pause, and for the first time, I felt that he understood I was serious. We are not close now, not the way we once were. The relationship is careful, fragile, like something newly repaired that could break again if handled roughly. But I no longer beg for inclusion. I no longer shrink myself to fit into spaces where I am barely tolerated. I have learned that family is defined not just by blood, but by behavior, by who shows up, who listens, who cares when it costs them something. That lesson came at a terrible price, but it gave me back my dignity. Sometimes I still think about the wedding, the music, the vows, the moment he smiled at her and promised forever. I imagine myself sitting quietly in the back, watching, proud and tearful, exactly where a mother belongs. That image will always ache, but it no longer destroys me, because I now know this. Being excluded does not make me unworthy. Being told I wasn't family does not erase the love I gave or the life I shaped. I am still a mother. I am still whole. And if my story has taught me anything, it is that the strongest families are not the ones that exclude, but the ones that endure with honesty, respect, and compassion, even when doing so is painfully hard.